Venture Voices! Excellent. We have a wonderful room packed with aspiring and existing entrepreneurs ready to take their business or their ideas to the next level. Thank you all for being with us today. My name is Junior Ognyemi. I am the enterprise advisor here at the Generator. We are basically the hub, and our team of enterprise advisors, we work together to tear your business apart, help you rebuild it, give you the funding, give you the skills, give you the network. So we're really happy to be putting on a program like this for you guys. We really believe that entrepreneurship isn't just something that you learn in theory, but it's something that you actually have to put into practice. And what better way to put it into practice by learning from people who are in the industry, people who are out there and been in the fields. One thing I was just realizing, I had this sort of epiphany this morning because I was on my way to deliver a master's class on business and entrepreneurship, and I was just thinking to myself, give me a ook. I was on my way to deliver a master's class. And do you know what's even funny? I was about to call my mum. I don't even have a master's yet. All right? I thought, wow, do you know what? Here I am, using my experience to empower people who are studying masters, and I don't even have a master's, because there's two types of learning. Yes, there's the learning that you do in academia, but there's also the learning that you do in the school of hard knocks from experience. I guess my credibility is that I failed in business, I've succeeded in business, I've gone through the whole cycle. So it's not just the stuff that you learn in theory, but also the stuff that you learn in practice, and I'm able to share that with other people so that they don't make the same mistakes. And that's what got me the invitation today. And this is where we really believe that the best learning is done. People who've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, made years worth of mistakes so that you don't have to. So you can learn from people in experience, from industry, from the trenches, so you can see a different perspective. There's one thing to show you a bunch of slides or give you a book to say, in theory, this is how you create a marketing plan. There's another thing to actually hear the train wreck and the horror stories of what happens when you try to implement that marketing plan. Or the successes and the fast tracks and the loopholes that you can go through to overcome some of those challenges. So without further ado, I am going to introduce the amazing Ash Phillips to join us. Now, we're going to have a special introduction for Ash, all right? Special introduction for all our speakers. It's going to be, so when I say number one, all I want you guys to do is just stomp your feet. We're going to practice. Number one. Good, all right. When I say number two, I want you to go, oh, almost like a big truck is coming towards your face or something like that. All right, ready? Number two. Oh, right, here's the best part. When I say number three, you guys get to go absolutely buck wild. All right, you get to scream, shout, share, cry, do whatever comes out. All right, but let loose. All right, the kids aren't watching. You're not going to get in trouble. Raise the roof. All right. So we're going to introduce our guest speaker, serial entrepreneur, Ash Phillips. Give me a number one. Number two. Number three.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Wow. Incredible. One, I feel like I should have had a Red Bull before this. That was insane. Two, you need to open for me wherever I go. This is crazy. So if you guys are following him and he's following me, we're all just going to go everywhere all at the same time. This is awesome. Firstly, thank you for having me. A really good point about the master's piece is that I didn't even get an undergrad. I dropped out in 6 months into university. So you're all way better than I am already, and we'll cover that in a second. But yeah, today's topic is how to build a brand. You're all building something, I presume. I've come here for a session before, and some of the startups that I saw up here on this stage were incredible, and had some really interesting brands. But there's obviously a huge amount of potential over time in building a brand and turning it into a great business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But the title of the talk isn't really that. Because it's a university, I'm not allowed to be that controversial, so I sneak the real title into the third slide, which is how to build a cult, right? That's what real brands are. Oh, nice, it worked. Thank you. That's what we're really trying to do, is build cult-like activity into our brands. And we'll talk about some brands that act like that soon. Junior and I have already discussed one today. But real brands that do well, understand psychology, right? They understand how brains work. They understand the art and science of belonging. And they essentially manipulate those things to get us to buy their products and services. Is that good? Is that moral? That's a much bigger question, probably for a philosophy major that might be happening in another building. But for now, we're trying to build commercial entities, and so we need to use that to our advantage. So let's start, right? The session today, just to give you a managed expectation about what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the welcome, which kind of doing right now. Then we're going to get into what a brand really is. We're going to explore some examples of good brands, bad brands, things that we like. And I'm going to ask you for examples. So get ready to just shout some answers out so we can hear you on the microphone. We're going to talk about the psychology of branding. What does it really mean to build a brand? And what do we think about that makes us buy, ultimately? And then wrapping up, we're going to talk about the rules that we can use in our own businesses, in our own ventures, to turn them into really strong brands that build loyalty and ultimately success. So that's what we're going to do today. The session's about 40 minutes, so we're going to go fast, if that's okay with you. It helps my ADHD, and I speak really quick too, so we're just going to touch on a load of things really quickly, but hopefully really intently and really purposefully. If you want to take some notes, great. If you've got any questions, we've got about 20 minutes at the end, so save them for then. Write them down, make sure they're good questions, as Junior asked for at the start. But ultimately, as I said, building a brand is important because it's everything, ultimately. Perception is reality, both in business and personal, right? It's what we think to be true, we kind of assume to be true. And this is true for business, but also careers and leverage. If your venture ambitions end up being sidelined for a specific while or don't go to the scale that you wanted them to initially, you end up starting a job, then brand's going to be incredibly important for you to understand, not only for the companies you work for and with, but also for yourselves at a personal level. And we'll touch on personal brand today as well. But you're probably wondering this question right now, and obviously Junior's been great at doing the introduction, but you're like, cool, let's give a round of applause to this guy I've never met. Who is he? What does he know about building a brand? So let me give you some insight on that. My name is Ash, and for those of you who can't see me at the front, that's what I look like. I don't know why I've got a picture of myself in here, but I do. And these are the jobs that I have, right? So I am a founder myself. I've been a founder for 15 plus years now. I've been a mentor and an official advisor to founders for around half that time. I've won some awards for it, so I think I'm all right at it. And what makes me a great advisor is that I've screwed up so much that I can help you not do that. I've worked probably with over 1,000 founders in the last 10 years, and have built, and those companies have built venture portfolio, or those companies form a venture portfolio that is around 100 million in valuations. And then sometimes I do speaking, which is a bit of a meta comment because I'm doing it right now, so it'd be weird if I didn't say that. The company I run, though, is called Rebellious. Now, when I dropped out of uni, I started a company that wasn't this company. I started a marketing agency that was building brands, and that's where the foundation of my knowledge around building brands comes from. I was creating logos for friends and websites for friends, and then friends of friends, and then people I didn't know eventually. And those people were the people that became real clients. But I went networking to a bunch of events to try and build that business. And at the time, I was about 21, 22, and realized I was the youngest person in the room. So I started a networking event for young entrepreneurs. Ironically, I think I'm like dressing backwards because I was like 20 years, not 20, maybe 15 years younger there. And I dressed like my dad then. I'm just holding on to my youth for dear life, basically. And so I started a network for young entrepreneurs officially. Eventually, that grew, and it grew across the country and eventually across the world. And then it got to the point where I was too old to go to my own events. And as a result of being too old to go to my own events, I couldn't call it the Young Entrepreneur Networking Association anymore. And so we rebranded it and turned it into Rebellious Co., as you see today. Rebellious Co. builds programs and initiatives for entrepreneurs and business leaders, of which our meetups are one. And just to get back to those meetups, we run them across 9 countries. We've connected over 22,000 people over 10 years. Supply chains, lifetime relationships, partnerships, even a wedding we've had. And I'm fingers crossed for our very first rebel baby at some point soon, but I'm not putting too much pressure on them. And this makes me feel incredibly proud. Those events that we run are completely free to attend because accessibility is really important to me. I want to make sure that people can get access to the opportunities they need to build something regardless of their circumstances, and that's what Rebellious is about at our heart. It's a value that we hold dear, and we'll get into values today across the session about branding. These are the companies we've worked for, just some logos to show you that we do some legit stuff. Picture me again, why not? I need to talk to my therapist about narcissism, clearly. But ultimately, let's get back to the subject of hand, which is, what is a brand? What is a brand? A brand is not just a logo, right? When you ask people, what is a great brand? What is a great brand? A lot of people think about visuals. They think about, well, that looks really nice, so it must be a great brand. But I'm sure many of you are probably already thinking it's a little bit more than that, and you'd be right. And that's what we're going to answer in a second, right? It's not about what you say, though. It's not what you say. It's how they feel. That's ultimately what a brand is. You are consumers of a product. You are followers of a movement. You are students of a university. And Greenwich has a brand, and so do every item of your clothes that you're wearing right now, and the car you might drive, and the football club you follow, and so on and so on. That list is essentially endless. How that brand is seen isn't defined by that brand particularly. It's defined by how you feel about that brand. And to wrap that up in a bow, who are they, right? They are your customers, of which you are, and I am. We are all customers. But they is also your partners and your suppliers and your investors and your employees. And everybody that you come into contact with is the they in the equation of how they feel. How these people feel define what your brand is. But the session today is giving you the insight of the things that you can pull on, those levers, those ropes that you can pull on to affect how these people feel and ultimately the perception of the brand that you're building. This is the saying that I think probably hits home the most. Your brand is what they say about you, feel about you, and think about you when you're not in the room. If I gave you a famous company to talk about amongst yourselves today, you may come up with some really consistent messaging between you, and that might be with people that you've never met before. What is happening there is the question that we're going to answer today, and we're actually probably going to do that exercise in a little bit. That quote was me, so if anybody wants to quote me on it, then you can, but just make sure you credit me. The thing that people get wrong here, though, right, is that branding is an action, but it's not. People think, I need to do branding. I need to build my personal brand. You already have a brand in your startup that you're building and the ventures that you're working on. You already have a brand as a person. Your brand is the sum of the things that you are and the things that you do already. Can you amplify those? Yes. Can you work on them? Yes. Can you change them? Yes. But you already have one, right? And so it's not an extra activity. It's not an addition. It is a subsequent thing. It's a result of the stuff that you're already doing. But what are those parts? What bits are you engaged in? What bits are the brands that you follow engaged in that are ultimately turning into the perception you have about them? The first one is comms, right? And by comms, I mean the things that we say. What do we say about the things that we do? That's the first line of brand. I do this. We've already done it today. I told you what Rebellious Co does. We build programs and initiatives for entrepreneurs and business leaders. That's my comms. You have a view about what we do because of that one-liner I've just given you. When you go on our website, which is currently down because it's being rebuilt, you'll see some more comms. And that comms will tell you a bit more about our services and our products and our team. That'll start to help you understand a bit more about our brand. But it's not just what we say, as we already know. It's what they feel. So what else comes into play here? Color is one thing. Again, it's not the whole, it's a piece of the puzzle. Color psychology is used all the time by big brands. We may not realize it, but the difference between the color yellow and the color blue will have different effects on you. Have you ever thought about the fact that social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn are all roughly the same shade of blue? That's really interesting, isn't it? Why is that? Well, we don't really have enough time to dive into the psychology of blue, but I can tell you that it has certain associations with professionalism. Would Facebook be as successful if its logo was yellow? Maybe, maybe not. There are questions to be had there, but I can tell you and guarantee that they're spending a lot more money than we are on understanding the impact of color psychology. So when Google changes its shades of yellow, green, blue, red, at any point, you can understand they're doing it for a reason, probably because they spent a lot of money on understanding the right shade of red. Values come into brand. What do we believe and why do we believe it, right? What are we for? What are we against? What are we about? Why are we doing this? What's important to me? I already shared one of my values with you, right? Which is the meetups that we run are free to attend. It's important to me that they're accessible for anyone regardless of their circumstances. That adds to your perception of my brand. Ash cares about people. Interesting. Rebellious cares about people. Interesting. Why? Why do they care? And values is a really important one because a lot of companies, I'm sure we've seen the ironic kind of imagery of companies putting words on the wall of their offices that say that we're honest and we're high integrity and we're passionate. Those are really throwaway. What are your real values? What do you actually care about? What cuts through the noise? What's human here, right? So values is also a part of brand. Tone of voice. Now, this is separate to the first one. Because comms are what you say, but tone of voice is how you say it. And we'll give some examples in a little bit. But you could probably see the difference between Deloitte and PwC versus your favorite drinks brand versus your favorite clothing company versus your favorite musician, right? They're going to talk differently to you as a consumer. Some will want to be your friend. Some want to be your superior. Some want to feel trustworthy. Some want to feel exciting. And the way they talk really makes or breaks how a brand works. I'm sure we've all seen other brands try to be a bit cooler than we already perceive them to be, and that will either land or it will miss. And when it misses, it comes across as cringe. And if it comes across as cringe, they lose equity from us as a brand. We go, they've tried a bit hard, that was a bit awkward. But some of them get it very right, and that line is really, really fine, but again, comes back to psychology. And then ultimately, it's the experience that we have with that brand, right? Their colors might be boring, could be grey, black and white, whatever. Ours is largely black and white, but we use a hot pink color through our branding. If you go and check us out online, there's a reason for that. It's about rebellion. There's a certain sense of energy that comes with that color. But we could have no color involved in what we do. And our tone of voice could be completely neutral. And our values could just not be obvious. But if you come and have an amazing experience at one of our events, then you'll have a perception about what our brand is about. And that's what we do with our meetups. They may be free to attend, but they are consistent in format. You go to one in Melbourne, you go to one in New York, and you go to one in Bristol, where I'm from, and you'll have a very similar experience at all of them. And that is by design, because that consistency and that welcoming nature and the fact that you walk into that room and feel like you are one of a bigger crowd of other people that just like you, and the thing that ties you all together is the fact that you're different to the masses, is part of the experience that we want you to feel. And if you feel like that, then you're more likely to buy from us, the other things that we do, and engage in the other programs that we run. Ultimately, this is the algorithm that we're looking at, right? For the people that are a bit math-like in the room, then brand is identity plus comms plus experience multiplied by time. We'll get to the time piece in a second, but consistency is key over time. I can give you this talk today and then we can never speak ever again. It will be a blip on your radar and you might remember a couple of things. You might take a picture of a slide, you might make a note on your notepad, and you may never remember it again. My job is to figure out how to engage you, if I need to, if I want to, in what we do on an ongoing basis, and to have that consistency. And that consistency can create challenges, and I'll touch on that along the way. So let's test the theory, right? This is the interactive bit. So for you guys to get involved, I want to test something with you right now about memorability of brands and recognition of brands, right? So the first one here, what I want you to do is to shout out or put your hand up as soon as you figured out which brand it is. So here we go. First one. Okay. Who do you think it is? Okay, we're going to go for the next one. I'm aware that also the colors might be slightly different on this screen, which might change this a little bit, but we'll go for the next one. It could still be Lego, but who have we got here? Okay, I'm going to do this. This will probably get you. There we go, right? 3 things. 2 colors and a word, and already you're at McDonald's. This next one's a little bit harder, but I'm curious. Depends on your preferences. But this is where we were going to go cool, 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 and then McDonald's. The golden arches are famous. They've become famous because of the things that we just mentioned. But that timepiece is very key, right? It's been the golden arches forever. If they suddenly changed their name or suddenly changed their logo and it wasn't a golden arch anymore, it would pattern interrupt and they'd have to build that brand equity with us forever again. But if you go on holiday and you're anything like me and you have slightly autistic tendencies, intricacies and the fact that you need to feel comfortable in a brand new place, you might go to one of two places like I do, and whether it's the right thing morally or the wrong thing to do, and I do love exploring new cultures, but you'll find me as soon as I get off the plane at either a McDonald's or a Starbucks, because I know it's comfortable, I know my order, and I'm gonna have the same consistent experience wherever I am on the planet. I'll go and eat and drink it somewhere a bit more local after that, but that's usually where that comfort comes in. If McDonald's changed their logo in a different country, I wouldn't recognize it. They probably wouldn't get my business as a result. Interesting. Second one. Okay, this is really hard already, so I'm just going to skip to the next one straight away. Who's this? What do people say? Okay, Skype. That's a glass of milk, though. Nice. So we had a blue rectangle and a glass of milk, and we were already at Oreo, right? So there's some recognition that's happening. You walk around a different store somewhere, and if someone's selling you a cookie with some cream in the middle of it, and they suddenly choose to use the color blue or put a picture of a pint of milk on their packaging, they may not even be Oreo, and if they don't get sued by Oreo for doing that, you'll still make the same association in your brain and go, that might be a good cookie to eat. And this is where brand starts to become really fascinating, at least to me. I'm a bit of a nerd about this stuff. Final one on this setup. So, bright orange. Anyone yet? Bless you. I'm always curious to see if anybody gets it. No. Not yet. Okay, let's do the next one. And this one. There we go. Okay, cool. Nike, right? Nike is famously multicolored, right? The color is a little bit of a red herring there, or an orange herring, excuse the pun, but they do use this specific orange in their branding on a constant basis. I don't know how that's happened there. There we go. But the slanted writing, the slanted serif, sans serif writing is pretty iconic, and they use it all the time. And the black and white imagery isn't, always black and white with Nike, but they do use it a lot. And actually, the fact that I've just pronounced it Nike is always interesting, because in the UK, a lot of people call it Nike, right? Whereas the official naming is Nike. It doesn't matter whether you say it, which way you say it, but everybody knows what they do and how they do it. Let's switch it around, right? Let's do this. When I show you a picture of this person, if you know who this is, what words would you use? Shout some words out to describe this person. Give me some descriptors. Okay. Cool. Wildlife. What else about this person? What is his way? What is his mannerisms? Okay. Calm. Okay, cool. Let's skip to the next slide then. So the next slide is me guessing the words that you were going to say. You said the word calm. I assume the word calming, adventurous, brave, inspiring, wise, a leader, right? Different people have different words, but we feel a certain way when we see images of certain people. Now, I don't want to ruin it for you, but I've been told that Sir David Attenborough isn't actually quite as nice as a person as we think he might be. But that's interesting in itself, right? In the fact that everyone will go, oh, he's like the patron saint of wildlife in the UK. He's like a national treasure. But that's because we've seen him on the TV. We've seen him over 20 years, 30 years of his career for as long as we've been alive, because he's a million years old now. This is the vibe that we get, right? We see that person as a talisman. Let's do this one then. So, Ms. Williams, what do we think about her? What words would we use to describe her? Iconic. Resilient. Tennis. Champion. Powerful. Okay, let's see what I came up with. Strong, motivated, determined, winner, athlete, leader again, right? So those words are all in the same sphere, and that's because she gives off this air of those things that we all then understand her to be. Is she doing that on purpose? This is kind of like a full circle moment. Is she doing that on purpose to make us feel like this about her, or do we feel like this about her because those are the things that she already is? That's what I wanted to kind of round up here on that point I made earlier, is that she's not doing these to build a brand. That's her brand because that is who she is. And so as founders of companies, and we're sat there on a given Wednesday going, I need to do a LinkedIn post because I need to build my personal brand, do the LinkedIn post because you care about something deeply, and that will subsequently build the personal brand about the things that you care about deeply. Don't do the LinkedIn post because you need to do a LinkedIn post, right? That's what I care about here. And from a branding point of view, from a company point of view, double down on your product, double down on your services, double down on your customer experience, because those are the things that are going to matter. Don't do an empty Instagram post that says, here's why we're amazing. Show, don't tell, right? Do, don't tell. Who's this? Two things. A turtleneck and a pair of glasses, and you already know who it is, right? If I took the pair of glasses away and put a jail sign next to it, you might say Elizabeth Holmes, because she stole the turtleneck thing from Steve Jobs in a slightly strange way. I don't know if you've read Bad Blood or seen the drama on TV, but it's a good one. Go and watch it. The actress plays her incredibly well. And actually, on this point, right, and this is very tongue-in-cheek as a comment to make, but I run a company called Rebellious, so it's on brand for me to say it. There is a type of mustache that no one can ever have ever again, right? Charlie Chaplin was one person who wore it, and there was someone else that did it. And that brand is tarnished forever, right? And so brands can go either way. There are certain things you can use and certain things you can't use. And actually, that person that I'm alluding to used a very significant icon that represented peace, flipped it the other way, and now even if you see the peace sign, you're still kind of curious about what it means and who put that there, right? And that's brands used in a negative way. That's cult used in a negative way. So we were talking about, before this workshop, we were talking about Apple and how they keep you in their ecosystem, right? I am, boo me if you want, an Android user. I've got a MacBook and I've got an Android. My argument is that before the new iPhones came out, I could charge my phone and my MacBook with the same charger, and people that had iPhones and MacBooks couldn't do that, which is crazy to me, but that's a whole other conversation about product ecosystems. What is interesting here, though, is that Android is, I think, still statistically the more popular brand on the planet, right? But in the Western world, we see Apple as a superior brand, often. Why is that, right? There's this tribal warfare between the people that own one of these versus the others. And I find it quite interesting that there's a bit of a meme culture now, in that if I send a text message, an SMS message, God, they're old school, aren't they, to a friend who has an iPhone, it comes up in green and not blue. Why do you think Apple have done that? It's really interesting, isn't it? It's creating a form of prejudice around the color of your text messages. Really weird. Does it make me feel ashamed? No, but it does make me feel weird sometimes, right? And I know that if you follow meme culture deeply enough and you're very online like I am, then you'll know that sending a text message to someone you might be dating might give them an opinion on who you are and whether they want to date you or not. That's wild, right, in 2026, but it's true. And so the important thing here is that the product, whether it's better or worse, because everybody always argues about whose camera is better, what phone is better, which software works better, it doesn't really matter. The thing that really matters is the identity. What do we associate with that product, and which one's better and why, and how hard are we going to fight about that as a consumer of it, right? Imagine spending over £1,000 on a product and then defending that product. You're the product at that point, not them. Weird. Let's look at another example. Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, an age-old battle, right? There is a story about how Richard Branson got the first advert in his student magazine, the first business he ever had, by telling Pepsi that Coca-Cola were advertising on the back, and then calling Coca-Cola and telling them that Pepsi were advertising on the back, and he created a bidding war from nowhere. Really interesting, because they have to fight for the same spaces. The thing that I find fascinating is that I prefer Pepsi in flavor, but I will still often find myself going to a bar and asking for a pint of Coke. And that's odd, because I prefer the other product. But the brand experience has been so ingrained in us over years and years and years that the "can I have a pint of Coke?" it just rolls off the tongue so much easier, right? I don't hear that many people who work at bars saying, "Sorry, we don't have Pepsi, is Coke okay?" Often you hear them saying, "Sorry, we don't have Coke, is Pepsi okay?" And I say, yeah, actually, that's better. And so what do we learn from this? We learn that product parity, i.e. products that may be deemed as good as one another, doesn't matter. It's brand dominance that matters. It's that consistency over time and that storytelling and the identity that we build within that brand. So let's talk about how, right? How does this work, and what's the psychology that's at play here? We could talk about this all day. This could be a 4-hour session rather than a 40-minute session, but I'm going to go with the basics and fundamentals so that you can apply this to your businesses as you go away from this room from today. 3 C's make up the foundation. Can anyone guess what any of the C's are? Shout them out and be clear with your shouting out. I gave you
Clarity.
There we go. I gave you such a hint. That was really good. Okay. Yeah.
Consistency.
Consistency, communication. Nice. Okay, good guesses. Let's get to the first one, clarity. First one is clarity. Woo! Round of applause, let's go. Nice. So clarity is really important, right? Because if you have any vagueness, and I'm probably the biggest culprit of this, in the fact that my neurospicy brain wants to do so many things, so I build a company that provides so many services and solutions initially, that we became so diluted and we became everything to everyone, and in the process became nothing to no one. Being clear about what you do and who you do it for is really important. You can play the Nike game, you can play the Apple game when you're at that level, but originally Apple were just building a better computer than Bill Gates was, right? That's what they were trying to do. And now you can buy all the products you ever need and all the electronics you ever need from Apple. Wait until you get to that point. Don't do that first, because that dilution of focus will slow you down. Clarity is really important. Who you're about, what you're about, why you're about it. Maya is a good example of this. So Maya is a good friend of mine. If you haven't come across her online yet, you should check her out. She's great. She is the #1 mental visualization, mental fitness expert in the UK. She is, talking about Nike, she is actually Nike's first mental fitness expert versus the physical fitness experts that they have, right? You can see from the numbers here, I think there are some numbers here, 500,000 followers on Instagram and a whole bunch of followers on LinkedIn and so on. And now she's published as an author with Penguin Random House and all those things, right? I gave a workshop like this to Maya about 8-9 years ago when she was at Bristol Uni, so I'm going to claim that I taught her everything she knew. The reality is that she picked a path and focused. That clarity was really important. I am a mental fitness expert. This is my story. No diversion, no dilution. And from the outside looking in, you could go, that's quite a very specific thing. But when you enter into that specific world, you realize it goes quite deep and it's quite wide, right? There's a lot to it. And so the thing that I wrestle with, and I'm just, I guess, reconciling with you and associating with the way that you guys might feel, is that I want to do all things all the time. And actually, I think if by narrowing that net, I'm narrowing my focus, and it might get boring, but it goes deep. There's a lot more in there, right? Nike started with running shoes, and their aim was, let's be the best running shoe company in the world. And now they do a lot of things, but they did that because they became the best running shoe company in the world. The second one is credibility. This comes back to building a brand because of what you have done, not building a brand to then go and do. Credibility happens when you have taken action and you've delivered. I get to have the credibility now because originally I would say, we're building great events for people to come and attend. Now I can turn around and say we've run events and we've attracted 22,000 people over 10 years for free. That builds credibility. Okay, Ash knows what he's doing because he's shown and he's done, he's not told, right? And I think this is where brands sometimes fall down. We're all smart people, you're smart people, and you swipe on Instagram and you end up at a person who's selling a course about something and they just don't seem to have the credibility. It's like I'm selling you a course on how to sell courses, but what have you done? Tell me what you've done, right? If Sarah Blakely from Spanx is selling a course, cool, I might buy it because she's built $1 billion business. This is why masterclass.com does so well, right? Because they get actual world leaders and they produce content at such a high quality, the credibility is high because I want to know how Bob Iger runs Disney. I want to do that, but I don't want to do that because it's Bob Iger. I want to know how he does it because he runs Disney, right? James Clear isn't famous for being James Clear. He's famous for being the author of Atomic Habits, and then he became James Clear as a result. So I could beat this point all day, but credibility is important. Go and do something, earn the credibility, and then parlay that credibility into brand. And the final one, I think somebody mentioned it already, is consistency. Doing it over and over again and doing it over time. Ironically, I'm going to mention consistency more times before the end of the workshop, and that's because this point's so important, I should mention it consistently to you. Because we can just kind of get disheartened. You do this for 6 months, and it's like, that's not really sticking. How long has McDonald's been going? How long have Nike been going? How long has Apple been going? You know, we can see the results of the brand by looking at their market share over time, irrespective of inflation. It goes up and to the right, right? And sure, economic circumstances and a whole bunch of other things are at play, but consistency is key. We are building the best technological products in the world. We're gonna beat Microsoft. That's what Steve did. And he did it consistently, over time. And those are the strong foundations for a brand, both business but also personal. We saw that with the example of Maya, but that's also applicable to a whole bunch of other people. We used the Serena Williams example earlier as well. Her brand is there because she's been consistent. I'm going to win everything in the tennis world, and she did. And now we know her as who she is because of that. You don't need to win, you can just be great, right? There's this might be a real left field example that I'm just coming up with on the spot, but there's a guy called Eddie the Eagle. I don't know if you've seen the film about Eddie. He was a terrible ski jumper, but he's famous. He was never the best, but he had a consistent, interesting, incredible story. And now there's a film about him that you can go and watch. And again, consistency here from me is that brands are the sum of our actions. Again, that's the message I want you to go with today. Let's add some more stuff to that, just to figure out what else is at play here. First thing is that trust beats price, right? So you might want to buy things that are slightly more expensive because you trust them to be better. I hate to keep bringing them up, but Apple is a great example here, right? This is damn expensive, but I'm going to buy it because I know it's good. And there is a certain reassurance that comes with price. And the stats back this up, right? Consumers are willing to spend up to 16% more on products and services from brands they think are premium and trustworthy. I think that probably increases over time and today because there are so many brands and we're so aware of so many things going on that the trust is really, really important, especially in the world of AI where everything's so scalable. Human is going to be key. And so building that trust with people means that they're going to want to buy into you even more. Here's an example. Stella Artois, for a very long time, I don't think they do this anymore. I'm not sure if advertising standards clamped down on it, but their whole brand over a really long period was that they were reassuringly expensive. Really interesting wording they were playing with there, and I can't remember what agency it was that came up with this, but kind of genius in my opinion, in that you might doubt how good a beer is, right, if you even drink beer in the first place. But the fact that it's a little bit more expensive logically would tell you maybe less people are going to buy it, but actually the inverse happens and they become the brand that they are today because people go and relate the quality with the price. We want to buy a better car, even though it's more expensive. Is it a better car? Maybe, but it still just gets me from A to B, so why am I doing it? There's an association with the fact that it's more expensive. Balenciaga might be a good example here in the fact that their price ultimately defines our perception of their quality. You know, you could buy a jumper with a whole bunch of holes in it, it might cost you $2,000. Is it a more quality jumper? There's a really interesting question to be answered there. Personality wins. What's your personality? Personality is ultimately, I guess, a proxy for brand. It's, again, a sum of certain parts, your tone of voice, what you want to say, your values. But doubling down on this and not being shy about it. What is your brand's personality? There are a couple of examples here that do this really well. You may be on Instagram, you may see these brands, and the other one that I'm going to show you next as well is also famous for this. But Ryanair are unapologetically kind of against the grain, right? They call out people that call them out on Twitter and X. They'll say things that are actually probably arguably offensive, but people love them for it. They're happy to burn one bridge to create 1,000 more loyal customers because they find it funny. And they own their stuff, right? They know that their whole brand is we're cheap. They're hilariously cheap. And they know that, and so they double down on it. And they start making jokes about how they're going to make you pay to go to the bathroom and how they're going to make you all stand up on a plane and so on and so on. It draws a laugh, it draws a smile, and ultimately it draws increased interest and prices and purchases for the brand. Same with Duolingo. Duolingo is unhinged, right? I don't know if anyone's seen them on Instagram. Follow them. They are unhinged. The owl scares me, I'm not going to lie. Like, obviously, it's a bit of an in-joke that if you don't do your lesson, the owl will basically come and hunt you down. And they run with it, right? But they run with it so far. I mean, I don't know what Gen Z or Gen Alpha is running their account, but they're a genius. And actually, the person who did build their brand recently left and went somewhere else, and someone's had to take over a really, really big responsibility there. But if you don't follow them already, I recommend going and following them because they're a really great example about how personality can make up for a lot of stuff, right? Because ultimately they're just selling you lessons on how to speak other languages. And arguably, for those who do speak other languages, they may tell you that it's actually not the most effective way to do that. Okay, so hills and lanes, what do I mean by this? Pick a hill to stand on, pick a hill to die on, pick your lane, stay in it, own that lane, right? Ultimately, this is what are you about, what are you for, what do you believe that the world should believe with you, right? Apple, Steve Jobs specifically believed that the world deserved beautiful machines. PCs were ugly. I want hardware to be beautiful. That's what we're going to do. That gave birth to the iPhone. It gave birth to the MacBook. It gave birth to really colorful products and now quite interesting and sleek futuristic products. It gave birth to a whole lot of things. And the consistency in both their software and their hardware. That's what he believed. That was their mission. That was the hill they were going to die on. Tesla is also an interesting example of this, right? Elon was like, I'm going to build the sexiest electric car because none of the other companies are doing that. Electric cars are boring and they don't look fun to drive. So I'm going to go and do that, whether you like Elon or not. That was their hill. That was their lane. Bit on the nose, but that was their lane. They picked it. They stuck with it, and that's what they were building. Two examples here that are really kind of on the nose. Ben & Jerry's a bit more controversial recently, given what's happened with the founder, but Ben & Jerry's have always been about their supply chain giving back and making sure that fair trade is delivered on within their brand. Patagonia, the same. The founder actually even gave the company to the employees and delivered on his mission to make the world a better place. It's in a trust now, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. These people are delivering on their promises. That's the hills that they stood on and the hills that they basically died on when they passed the company on to other people. The story is important, though. The story is important in all of this. How you tell that story, right? A good movie, a good book is dependent on not just the character, not just the action, not just the risk of failure, but the entire story and how all of this fits together. So it's not just that you can go and pick a really cool color for your brand and hope that that works. Yes, I picked a bright pink. That's not going to do anything on its own. I need to ingrain that into all the other stuff that we have. And our events, for example, have a really good diversity demographic at our events. And people ask questions. They say, how have you done that? Because a lot of people think that diversity needs to be done as a separate action. But what I've done, hopefully, by design and intent and purposely, is build color psychology, comms, imagery, iconography, and all of those things together to make people find us and go, this is something for me, and this is where I feel at home. But ultimately, it's not the story you're telling. It's a story they're hearing. They want to see themselves they want to see you in their success journey. And that's what Nike do really well, right? You look at all their adverts, it's not necessarily about LeBron. It's about you and how you could be that person, right? It's not about Serena Williams. It's about you and how you could be that person. It's about the everyday athlete aspiring to be the elite athlete and how that gap can be bridged. That's the story they're telling. They're telling your story to you, your potential to you. That's what they're doing. They're not saying, we're all about Ronaldo, and here's why you should buy something that's related to Ronaldo. It's saying you could be Ronaldo. Two more things here. So the coffee loss test, very quickly go over this. But ultimately, how do you know if you're doing this well? How do you know if people value you as a brand? Well, they will tell you how much they would pay for you not to disappear. This is why I call it the coffee loss test. I'm sure it's got a proper title. I'm sure someone else did it. You can Google it and find this out. But ultimately, there is a survey you can do, which is how much would you pay me not to take coffee away? Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, so I'd be really bad on this test. But the people who are coffee drinkers and devout coffee drinkers will pay quite a lot of money not to take coffee away from them, right? I imagine we're all addicted enough to our phones nowadays that if I said, how much would you pay me not to take your phone away, it might be quite a lot of money, right? And so that tells me how loyal you are to that product. And you can do this with brands too. How much would I pay you, would I have to pay you to take my product away? We did this as a community. How much do you enjoy our events, and how much would I have to pay you to take the events away and stop them existing? Some of the numbers were really quite surprising, and one, it's reassuring to know that people value it so much. Someone even replied saying, if you do this, I will just start the events and run them myself. That's incredibly encouraging. It means that we're doing something that people genuinely care about. And then to deliver this properly and strategically, you want to be thinking a bit numerically. And there is a bit of an understanding that 7 brand touch points over time turn into a sale. This actually also works for business development as well, right? One pitch deck to one person, it's a little bit one-off and they're probably not going to convert. Whereas if you've met them at an event and shook their hand and had a conversation, sent them an email follow-up, that's 2. Had a conversation on the phone afterwards, that's 3. Sent them a proposal after that call, that's 4. Maybe followed up on an email, email again, that's fine, and so on. You get to the point where you have 7 brand touch points, you're more likely to buy. And this is why people and large companies spend so much money on things that don't have a direct ROI. Billboards are a good example of 7 touch points in action. I'm probably not going to go and buy a McDonald's because I've seen a McDonald's billboard and gone, oh, you know what, I am hungry. That may happen, right? That sometimes happens. I'm not going to buy tickets for flying on Emirates because they sponsor Arsenal. It's not going to happen. But I might be more likely to make certain associations with that brand and find them more reassuring because I've seen them in more places, 7 places to be specific. So think about, where are people seeing you? How are they seeing you? How are you getting in front of them? If you run an email marketing campaign, for example, send 7 and just see what your conversion rate looks like across that time and see if it increases after that number. So let's round up, right? Let's round up with rules. What can you take away today to build a great brand in the ventures that you're building? First and foremost, rule number 1, who aren't you for, right? Again, a little bit controversial here. I like breaking the rules. The important thing for me, though, is not talking about who you are for, because you could find a way and a reason to fit every person on the planet into your total addressable market for many businesses. Who aren't you for is a much more effective question, so that you can figure out, if someone turns up to your office, what does that person look like? What do they sound like? What do they dress like? What's their socioeconomics? And you can boil this down, if you are doing demographics, to A1, C3, whatever it might be. But who aren't you for? Who aren't you servicing? Depth, we've touched on. Go deep, don't go wide. Try and do an incredible job for one person in one way. And that will proliferate way faster than doing an average job for a lot of people over a period of time, right? Be great for a small number. Think about them. What is their story as it relates to you? This is something I've fallen foul of myself, and that's why the website is currently being rebuilt, because I realized that our branding was very much about what we do, how we do it, why we do it. The why we do it gets close, but not close enough. As you'll see with our new iteration, it will tell stories of our members and our community and who you can be through us, not who I want to be because of you. Create belonging. I'm a community guy. I do workshops on community. Maybe we'll do another one another time. But belonging is really important, right? Gymshark is a good example of this. People buy the Gymshark brand. They want to be part of the Gymshark community. I imagine at some point they'll open gyms, and there will be a specific type of person that will go to those gyms, and those people probably would have owned their products for a long time too, right? Because they belong to this community, to this tribal instinct of brand. And doing the unscalable things. This touches back on the human element in 2026, which is, in a world where everything is spammed at you digitally, where can you differentiate? Doing the unscalable thing is a quote from, I think, Paul Graham from Y Combinator. But ultimately, this is something you can't do forever, right? You guys are at an early stage in most cases, I imagine, in your ventures. Make the most of that, because while you're in your early stage, you get to do this. After the early stage, you never really get to do it again. But what do I mean by unscalable? Send a note to your customers when you send them something. Send them a personal email from you. Your first 10 customers, your first 100 customers, however many you can afford the time to do this with, send them a personal email and say, look, thank you so much for signing up. Like, we're just building this and we're just at the start of this process. It means a lot to us. I would love your feedback and the experience and hearing about the experience that you've had. I have advisory clients who do one-to-one work with founders on an ongoing basis. And in this January, literally 2 weeks ago, I sent them all a personalized book, a book that was personalized to their business and their experience and what I know about them, with a card that said, I'm proud of the work that they've been doing and I'm excited to work with them in 2026. I got a response from every single one of them saying, thank you for this. It was so meaningful. It was really great. And every time they open that book and read that book, they're going to see a little note on the inside page on that book from me, which is also related to them. It's a totem for future trust. But it's something I won't be able to do for people where, if and when I've got 200 advisory customers. One, because I'd be knackered, but 2, because it's just not scalable. But at 10 or 20, I can do that, and I can do it really well and really meaningfully. This is just a roundup of the rules, right? And just reminding you here that brand is identity and comms and experience delivered over time with consistency. Thank you, and any questions? All good?
Perfect.
Okay. I mean, I did say any questions, so if anybody does have any questions, then pop your hands up and ask.
First of all, can we give that another amazing round of applause, please? Honestly, I work with so many brands and resonate with a lot of stuff, but I also learned a lot of stuff as well. It's just like, yeah, the color thing. And it's such a complex field that I just love how you broke it all down into simple stages and formulas. That's absolute genius to do, because to get branding right can literally be make or break for your business. So I'm going to kick off with the first question because I'm going to be greedy, all right? While you guys think, you guys are still taking time to think, but get your questions ready. The big question in today's day and age, everyone's told, build a personal brand, build a personal brand, build a personal brand. What are the pros and cons of personal brand, particularly for business owners? All right. So yeah, what are the pros and cons of building a personal brand? Which one would you say? I'm launching a business. Should I lean in on a personal brand and put my face out there, or should I just leave it to a faceless business brand?
Okay. Well, I mean, huge question, huge amount of answers, and I know you know that, so I'll try and like encapsulate it. One is, sure, you should build a personal brand in many cases, but not all cases. There are exceptions, right? Personal brands are huge now. The fact that I've got a LinkedIn here, this is the extent of my personal brand. If you go on my Instagram, you won't see that much. My Instagram's basically my personal life, but that's ironically a little bit part of my personal brand. I want you to know I'm human as well, and actually that work isn't my life, because I think that's a little bit unhealthy. That's my personal brand. It's not me forcing it, it's just a byproduct of the way that I already am, right? So that's one thing. Should we be building a personal brand is a big question because of the exitability of a business, right? Maya's business, I gave you her as an example earlier, right now will be quite difficult to exit because she is invaluable to that business. Without her, there is no business, and what is her business if she leaves, right? That's a danger for you if you want to take a 3-month holiday or a break, if you are the thing that drives the business in the first place. Without you, there is no business, and therefore you don't get to take a day off. There's a big question about what success is, right? Is success loads of money, or is success the ability to have a 3-month holiday and never worry about what's happening in the office? That's for you to decide philosophically. And then ultimately, what can you do, which I know you didn't ask, but I just want to add this in, to start building that personal brand? Something that I get my clients to think about on an ongoing basis is flywheels. Sounds boring, I promise it's more interesting, which is how do you organically build actions into your day-to-day work that make personal brand a byproduct of what you're already doing, right? And brand as a whole. So if I land a client, what I'll do is I'll celebrate that publicly if I'm allowed to do that. And I'll say, I'm working with these guys, really excited to do that. It might be an individual person, just started working with Joe. He runs this company, I'm really excited for this reason. That's part of a flywheel, which I know is if I win a client, shout about the client. Because what that does, it raises brand awareness to other people. But I'm excited to do that anyway. It's not, I've been working with Joe for 3 months, I better do a post about it. It's land Joe, talk about Joe. Anybody that engages with that content, engage with that person, build that relationship, turn one into a client, and that's when that wheel becomes a flywheel, because that process starts all over again. So start to build those actions in organically. If it's a Monday and you have a team meeting, go, I'm just going to do a video following the team meeting. I've actually just started doing this myself. When I have advisory calls with people, pro bono or paid, if there's one little nugget of information in there that I think is interesting, after the call, while it's still top of mind, I'll just take my phone out of my pocket, record a piece to camera. I've not used it for anything yet, but record a piece to camera, and that's a flywheel. Had a call, said something that he thought was actually interesting, recorded it, that's potential content to be used later on. That's a flywheel. So hopefully that's kind of a bit comprehensive.
Love that. Brilliant. Right, we've got a Roman mic somewhere.
Somewhere.
Right, so who's got the question first? Grab the...
What I noticed that any brand, you need to make sure that you have the equation, demand and supply and service. Without customers, and if you don't supply, don't give what they want, you don't have any business, any brand.
100%.
Again, duplication, because Jim Rohn said, I rather prefer to have 1% of 100 people than 100% of my own effort.
100%.
If I mean or something happened with me, happened with our business or the brand.
It's a refreshing observation.
You've got three criteria which you need to count to keep.
No, so I agree, and the observation you're making is refreshing, because a lot of people in 2026 think build a community first, build an audience first, build loads of people. But I agree, which is that if I have, there's a bunch of followers on LinkedIn, great, cool. But if none of them are buying from me, what's the point, What really is the point? Now, it comes up as a question for me with our community. 22,000 people connected at events for free. What really is the point? And that's the difference between being an impact organization and being a massively capitalistic organization. If I wanted to be the latter more so, then it would make way more sense for me to have a very successful event of 20 people, right, who love me deeply and pay a lot of money for that. If I started this all again, I might do that because I've done all my impact stuff now. That's out of the way. I can go and be an asshole. But the reality is that, a lot of people think, I'm going to build 1 million followers on Instagram, then I'll figure it out. And I think that's so dangerous because building a community first is a nightmare because then you have to find out what those people want. But going deep, depth rather than breadth. It's really, really key. So good observation.
If you don't try, you don't know. You win or you lose. So
And ultimately sell something.
take the risk to make sure you minimize the risk.
Hell yeah.
Any business, even our own life is the biggest business. Anybody is a businessman or businesswoman. We need to run our lives. So.
True. That's deep. There's some philosophical stuff right there. Any other questions? Thank you.
Question over here, right?
Thank you for today. Lots of good tips you give to us. So my question, we all heavily rely on social media. So if I would like to build a personal brand, but without social media, can I be successful?
Yes.
Or using less?
Yes, so I would play, half the time my job is to play devil's advocate, right? The statement you made at the start, this isn't to be an asshole, but the statement you made at the start, if a client said that to me, I would call them out on it and ask if that's true, right? We all should be building social media to be successful. We need to do that. Is that true, truly? We're told that's true, but some of the biggest brands in the world were built before social media ever existed, right? Social media is a distribution channel. It's not the reason people buy purely. It's a way into the website where someone buys. It's a way into the email address where they email you. It's a way into something. And sure, TikTok Shop is an anomaly where I can click and buy instantly, and so that does happen. Some businesses cannot be built without social media, and some personal brands do deeply rely on social media. But in a world pre-social media, which I just about remember, personal brands happen anyway. You have a personal brand with your friends, with your family. My family know me as a certain type of person. My friends know me as a certain type of person, and those people are different because those brands are different. My audience knows me as a certain type of person. The person you're seeing right now is a version of me. It's not all of me because I put a bit of a mask on when I'm talking. And that isn't to say you're getting a fake me, you're just getting a version of me. I will go home back to Bristol tonight, lock my door, close my curtains and never speak to anyone because I need about 12 hours to recover from doing this stuff, right? But that's to say that I'm here, we haven't connected on social media, I have built a certain level of perception to you now and potentially some clarity, potentially some consistency, some credibility, and so I've built a bit of personal brand. Would it be more effective if you all followed me on LinkedIn afterwards, started engaging with my posts? Yes, but I still would have built some personal brand with you. And I think that's probably the same with, let's say, lecturers here, right? You might have a favorite teacher. That is a personal brand. They are your favorite teacher because you probably don't follow them on Instagram, but they have a brand with you. And if that teacher started to sell something, you might buy it because of the person that they are. So ultimately, the answer is you don't need social media to build a personal brand. You absolutely can and possibly should amplify your personal brand using social media, but only building a brand on social media and having that not reflect you in the reality is the dangerous house of cards, right? They say never meet your heroes. If you ever meet someone who's an influencer for influencer's sake and they're just not that person offline, that's when that personal brand completely breaks. And so I think we've seen that a couple of times, to be honest, already. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. I've kind of gone around the houses a little bit, but I'm bullish for offline, especially in 2026.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think also there's so much flooding of online content now that even if you made it to the top of social media, you're there for 3 months and then someone else has taken over. So to maintain that, because it's so easy to do and everyone's doing it, sometimes it's like your strongest personal brand is stuff that you're doing that's not where all the traffic is as well.
100%.
Even businesses now have gone back to delivering posts in the mail because nobody's doing it anymore.
100%.
Digital channels, it's there's so much noise there. Like, yes, you will get thousands of followers, millions of followers, but then so is the next person, and it's the next wave. So
Yeah.
always think about being different. Right, so who had their hand up next?
It's one here, one here, one here.
I have such provocative question.
Do it.
If you had a chance to build your brand again from the very beginning, what would you do in a different way?
That's such a good question. Such a good question. I would go deeper, for sure. I think I alluded to it during the talk, but I went super broad. I helped a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And that's nice. It feels nice. You get loads of people like you a bit. But the more powerful thing on reflection would be to have a few people like you a lot. And if you get people that like you a lot, they will spend more money with you, they will talk about you more, and then that will proliferate outwards, which is, I guess, what I was alluding to with the Apple conversation about building the best PC or the best laptop or the best computer, and then eventually giving yourself permission at billion-dollar market cap. If I use that analogy, I think what I tried day one was build the phone, the laptop, the computer, the iPod, all on day one, because I'm like, then I can help everyone. And I think a lot of startups, a lot of founders have a tendency to do that. It's like, if I want to solve problems, let's just add and add and add. What I would do next time, if I could go back and start again, is strip everything away and do the least I possibly can. And I have a plan for that, actually, if it ever happened, which is that I would probably launch there's so many things I could do, but there's one idea that I really want to do, which is launch an accountability club. It would literally be a stand-up and a retro meeting for any people that have done corporate stuff, a Monday morning meeting and a Friday afternoon meeting for people that are freelancers who work on their own, because they don't have that accountability. I charge them, I don't know how much for a meeting. That would be it. That's all I would do. Stand-up, retro, once a week, each for you. 20 people, charge you, I don't know, 50 quid, and away we go. And then you start thinking about scaling, obviously, but I wouldn't do any more than that. Whereas our community before had so much in it that people would join and they're like, there's too much. I don't know what, there was so much value. So yeah, short answer is I'd do less and do that to the extreme.
Hello, thank you so much. How long it's take how long average for to win the brand, and because like you said, for a brand there is a story behind, and it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So people they say they say a brand they will not say the hard work and everything behind the brand.
I would say, okay, so I don't think there's a definitive answer for this as like a number, but I think it's a graph, which is longer the time goes, the deeper the brand penetration is and the loyalty and the recognition is, and then the bigger the challenge you have in changing it afterwards. I can tell you that is true for two reasons. One, because of a social experiment that I like to do, but also for reality. We were the Young Entrepreneur Networking Association. You saw that at the start of my intro and my slides. Then we became Yenna because I wasn't young enough anymore, and we had to change to a noun. People kept calling it the Young Entrepreneur Networking Association for a year and a half after I made that change, and it wasn't true anymore because that was where we were deeply ingrained in their psyche over 3-4 years over that time. Realized that wasn't enough of a change, so we had to change the name completely, otherwise people were always going to remain confused. So we became the Rebellious Co. And in becoming Rebellious Co., it started to shift more. Still taking time, took at least a year for people to start to go, this is Ash from Rebellious, rather than this is Ash from Yenna. And I still have people do that now. So the real answer is that the longer you go for, the longer it is to change. That graph really is kind of a bell curve. But the social experiment I like to think about is more of a personal brand piece, right? Which is, I'm the startup guy right now. If people follow me online, they go, Ash does startup stuff, I'm going to expect startup stuff. If I suddenly really, really got into baking, right, and I wanted that to be my personal brand now, how long would I have to post about baking for on social media for me to become the baking guy in people's minds? If I posted about British Bake Off once, it would be Ash is a startup guy who watched British Bake Off once, right? If I was posting about British Bake Off every day while the show was on, it would be Ash is a startup guy, but he's kind of obsessed with British Bake Off. If after Bake Off finished, I kept talking about baking and never spoke about startups again, it might be a few more months before people started to go, Ash doesn't really talk about startups anymore. He's definitely more of a baking guy. If I then launched a bakery and started selling cakes and so on, then it starts shifting. And so the reason it's a social experiment is because that doesn't give you a definitive answer, but it helps you think about the amount of emotional turmoil that has, or the amount of emotional change that has to happen in someone's psyche for them to picture you as someone new. If you build planes right now, amazing. But if you want to start, I don't know, if you want to become a rally driver, how long would you have to drive cars for me to go, oh, he doesn't do planes, though he used to do that, now he's a rally driver, right? So yeah, it's not a definitive answer because I don't think there is one. There might be a big research uni that's found a number, but that'd be interesting to Google. Yeah, there's one here, red scarf.
Thank you for your talk, it was amazing. I have a question about who you do the storytelling for, if you have customers and users.
Are they, okay, interesting.
School, and sometimes I tell stories about my kids, the kids of the school, sometimes I talk to the parents, and sometimes I don't even know who I'm talking to.
That's a really good question. It's a curious one because especially in this example, it's interesting because it's very emotive, right? The parents want to see stories about kids because they want to see the success of those kids because they see the success of their kids in those stories. Also, the parents are the people paying the bill, and usually you want to tell the story about the person paying the bill, right? Like, you are parting with this money because this is the person you can become, this is the reality that you can enact for yourself. But in your scenario, I would say it's the kids, because the parents are paying the money because of the kids. I'm not a parent, so it's slightly harder for me to envisage that, even though I can logically understand that if you're a parent, you care so much, you spend all your money on your kids, you want them to be the best, and so therefore, if I see stories about kids doing incredibly well, I'm going to send my kids to those schools. And I think that's obvious. No offense, it's just become obvious to me in that explanation, because we would, if we could afford to, send our kids to the best possible schools. Why? Because we've seen the results of those schools in the people that are alumni of those schools, and we go, well, we want our kids to be those people. Eton is famous for a reason, right? Is it a good school? Arguable, depends on your opinions about the education system. But we would go, if I could afford to, maybe I would consider it, because I know that my kid could maybe become a prime minister. I'm not going to buy it because they're talking about the parents of the kids at the school. So in your case, I would say the kids. Definitely. You're welcome. Two more here.
As a student, if I want to establish a brand or I want to build a personal branding, the first step, what should I need to do? As I am a new entrepreneur and want to establish my own brand and own identity. So at first, what steps I should take?
Okay, so first tip is, and this is reiterating, I guess, on what we've already said, right? So the first tip is, and I don't want to sound like I'm dumbing this down too much, but the first tip is just do stuff, right? Build the business, do the thing, and then your brand will be, oh, she does the thing, right? That's it. Rather than building content about possibly doing the thing, then you're the person who does content about the thing, right? So the real brand that you want is the consistency and the credibility. Did the thing, therefore is the person, rather than became the person in order to do the thing, right? Simon Sinek is the Start With Why guy because he gave the TED Talk and wrote the book. Now he's the Start With Why guy. He didn't build the brand of being the Start With Why guy to then get the book deal necessarily. You could argue that is the case. And then the practicality, the practical tip, I guess, the pragmatic thing to do is if you're studying and building, you're a busy person. This is where the flywheels come in. Do something small and do it really well. And that might be, I study, I'm going to create some content about my studies and what I learned. It might be a microblog that I'm going to publish. Or it might be, I built the thing, I'm going to capture some content about that and share that. It might be, I'm going to engage with a certain person every week, or a certain type of person every week. It might be that. That might be your personal brand. It depends on what you're building, ultimately. But do something small, do it well, and build it into the flywheel of your life already. Otherwise, it's, I work, I study, now I've got to do content as well. It's an addition. Don't make it an addition. Make it organic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, final one here.
In any business, we should not give false expectations to the audience. Transparent, with a certain clarity, and credibility, and plus we need to, in any business, we need to make sure we shouldn't forget that break-even point. That one, you need to work hard to make sure that you recuperate your investment. Otherwise, instead of, I know all of us want to become millionaire overnight, and force every social media is very good, but that doesn't mean if you are not a millionaire overnight, that means you are not as good as you want to become. All you need to do, honesty, step by step, and make sure if you want your business to work and trust yourself, break-even point.
I love it. You know what?
You know better.
I will double down on your mindset, and I think more people should have your mindset, which is that a lot of people will talk about building a personal brand and the importance of that, and that's why it was a small part of this, because ultimately, the question that happened over here earlier about the importance of building a personal brand is that it's part of your business, really. Sure, it's part of your career, it's part of your overall perception in life, but ultimately, if you're relating it to your business, it's part of your business. And if your personal brand is part of your business, it's part of your marketing activity. And if it's part of your marketing activity, then ultimately, it's blended into your customer acquisition cost, right? And so if you're spending a huge amount of time on personal brand, but you're not growing your bottom line, what is the point in building a personal brand, right? And so it should be related to the outcomes. The reason why Maya's personal brand is so big is because every time she posts, she probably gets 1,000 leads from C-level executives saying, hey, I really want to work with you because I know you work with Olympians and athletes and so on, right? Because she knows there's a direct ROI on that personal brand activity, and over time she'll be able to calculate that. But yeah, I totally agree with your point. A lot of people won't look at the bottom line. They'll just look at the vanity metrics of, I've got 1 million followers. Cool, but if you're not paying your salary, what are we doing here? So bottom line first, sanity, then vanity on top.
It's about working hard and never give up.
100%.
If you could do a bit more, you can do it the next step, but never give up.
Nice.
Keep going.
I need you just stood next to me, shouting at me all day. It's great.
Massive round of applause.